Hello, my wonderful humans. I am still behind. It's been a rough couple weeks. I'm not feeling the best. And we had a cold front move in, which gave me the mega sniffles with allergies. And we have like poopy weather threatening to come in, which honestly, if it doesn't shut me down out of work, then I don't care. But we are going to be talking about the Karen Reed retrial. I'm going to be doing the updates and summaries from days 16 and 17. I'm okay with combining these days because there weren't a lot of witnesses. These were mostly foundational witnesses and forensic examiners, and honestly their stuff it's important but not exciting. That always tends to be the case with this stuff, but we did have some spice thrown in there. So let's start with day 16. We had spice on day 16. We had, at last, we have the medical examiner. Sometimes they're called the coroner. They are the person who examined the body. Wanted to make sure I said this name right. Dr. Scorti-Bello. She was a great witness. I love listening to medical examiners because you can tell that they're trying to give the information, but they're so annoyed with being there. There's a reason they work with not living people. It's because they don't want to deal with living people. They're like, I want to be a doctor. I just don't want to talk to you. And so she had come to the undetermined as the manner of death, and she was explaining that they have about 90 days. It's not a guarantee, but it is a goal of their facility to try to get the death certificate to the family so they can proceed with funeral things, and that they can amend a finalized death certificate later, but that they try to get that within 90 days when they're doing an autopsy, because you do need time. You need time to carefully examine, log, and document your information. Haven't seen that from the Canton law enforcement, but she was doing it. And Brennan really did not do himself any favors, because he had said, did you know going into the autopsy, or as you were doing the autopsy, that that Karen Reed had claimed that she hit him, or that he was hit by something, that there was the determination of a motor vehicle collision was suggested. Did you know that all these witnesses and people said that stuff? And the coroner said yes. Now, what that means is she had all the information, so she was like, okay, I know that, I can look for certain things. When you're doing an autopsy, you don't just want to randomly chop up a body. You want to be very methodical about it. And so she said that it's not necessary, but it is useful when she knows what to look for and what not to look for. For instance, if you know the person was not shot, you're not going to spend your time looking for bullet wounds or fragments of bullets and other bullet filaments around the body. You're not going to bother looking for that. Like, you're going to be able to look at the body and see that there's no bullet wounds, but you're not going to be trying to test for those filaments and those powders and residues, because it's not there. And she said the body's just going to tell you what the body's going to tell you. Whatever happened. I'm going to be able to see it. But if I know something did not happen, I know this person didn't drown, I'm not going to be looking for those things. But if I see, wait a minute, they said this person didn't drown, why are their lungs doing this? Those are notable things. And so even though she knew the claims that Karen Reed had hit him, that the tail light was broken, etc., she still determined that she determined it to be undetermined. She could not tell if what had happened to John O'Keefe was definitively an accident or a homicide. She knew that he did not do this to himself. The other useful information that came from Dr. Scorti-Bello was that the injuries to John O'Keefe's eyes and face could not have happened by being struck in the back of the head from hitting his head on the ground. And she was specifically asked that during cross-examination of, could he have received those injuries if he had fallen back and hit his head on the frozen ground or on a step? She said, no, the way the trauma was to the face, something had to impact him head on. It couldn't have happened from the back of the head forward. It had to have happened coming at his face. And there was objections by Brennan about, because they said like a punch, and she was like, a punch, an object. Something came at his face and impacted his face directly. Whatever it was caused those injuries. It was not a hit to the back of the head, which of course is a blow to the Commonwealth's theory that he was rendered unconscious falling on the ground and hitting his head after Karen Reed hit him, and that explains some of his injuries. What doesn't explain that is that even on direct examination, the coroner was very firm in saying that no, his body was not consistent with being hit by a vehicle. They were like, well, do you have to be hit by your whole body? And she said no. But if he was backed into where he would have been hit in order for him to fall backwards and become unconscious to the back of the head, he would have had to sustain certain injuries to his legs and to his abdominal. He did not have those injuries. His injuries were to his right arm and his thing. Can you say where these came from? And she said, no, I cannot say for certain where these marks came from. They just were inconsistent with being hit or struck by a vehicle. Now, could he have scratched his arm in other ways or gotten those lacerations other ways? She said they were not burns, they were not strikes by a vehicle, which again, not helping the Commonwealth's case. And it also doesn't help, as I had emphasized, that she had said she already knew that information. Okay, you can tell me that you think he was hit by a car. That doesn't change that his body does not show the injuries consistent with being hit by a car. And she goes, there's never a 100% guarantee. There are anomalies that happen. She goes, but with my experience and knowledge, his body did not have the injuries that were consistent or that I would put to vehicular incident, which of course does not help at all. It's like, okay, well, if he didn't sustain vehicular injuries, then Karen Reed couldn't have hit him with a car. Nobody could have hit him with a plow or anything else. So I don't know where the Commonwealth is expected to go from here. Where is their case? They don't have their lead investigator, main case agent coming to the stand, apparently. And they're trying to distance him from even being involved in the case, even though his name is literally on every evidence label. And you have the coroner, medical examiner, saying that all the ways that the Commonwealth has tried to claim are what happened to John O'Keefe, that those aren't the injuries that he has. Okay, so where are you supposed to go with that? And we also got further information that as far as hypothermia goes, I now realize where the defense is trying to go, but I think that it's iffy ground. And iffy ground's going to lean in favor of the defendant by jury instruction, but I don't know about this. It was that he was found unresponsive in snow in cold conditions, but he did not have frostbite, and the stuff that happened to his innards, to his internal organs, that were consistent with hypothermia could also be consistent with gastral buildup from alcohol consumption, which he did have the night before, and that she could not 100% determine one way or the other or how it got there. She went with hypothermia because he was found in the snow, but there is another scientifically reasonable explanation for what could happen that she could not rule out. So that's where we are for day 16. For day 17, what we're getting led into is the fact that there was a picture the defense brought up from the morgue, and Dr. Scorti-Bello said there were 2 law enforcement officers. She couldn't remember their names. She didn't know who they were. She thinks she remembered somebody saying that they were something, but she couldn't remember. That she was working off of a 2-year plus memory, and that she sees a lot of law enforcement people. She doesn't distinguish all of them. Fair enough. But there was a photo with two people. I'll put the photo up here. And this one looks a lot like Trooper Proctor. If you've never seen this before, you don't know who Trooper Proctor is. I'll put up a picture of Trooper Proctor, or former Trooper Proctor. Let me be proper. And that looks like him, but it's hard to tell. She said she didn't remember their names. She thought that one of them was Connor, but she couldn't remember for sure. Well, there's a log. And the log says that there's a Mr. Connor and a Mr. Keith. Okay, Connor Keith is one person. Well, then in day 17, they did a follow-up of the logs and the badge numbers, and it turns out that there was two people at that autopsy, but not Proctor. The two people whose badge numbers were associated with the logs for the morgue and at the autopsy were Trooper Connor Keith, and also someone named Trooper Watson. Who's Watson? Where did Watson come from? I haven't heard Watson. We haven't seen a Watson. I don't remember a Watson from the first trial. Who's Watson? Why aren't we seeing him? If he was at the autopsy for John O'Keefe, why hasn't he come up in this trial? But it wasn't Proctor, which I don't think helps the case any at all, because we still have Connor Keefe lying that he said that he went to the autopsy by himself. No, you didn't. You went with Watson, according to the log and this photo. And Dr. Scortibello, who has no reason to lie about this, said she remembered that at the autopsy of John O'Keefe, there were two law enforcement officers. She just didn't know who was who. Fantastic. And then we still have the lead investigator not going to the autopsy, which again goes to, this was a poor investigation that was poorly done, and now we just have all of the Canton troopers and Boston police people lying on the stand. We continued day 17 with Andre Porto. Andre Porto is a Massachusetts police crime lab investigator / forensic scientist analyst, and he was talking about some DNA and some processes. He was mostly foundational. He had a very short testimony, and he was talking about the drinking glass and putting that together, because there was a broken glass found by Sergeant, man, there's a lot of these people, Gallagher. I'm not Sergeant, Lieutenant Gallagher. He was the one with the leaf blower. He found that, and that was the only piece of evidence that he logged. Remember, he was the one with the solo cups, didn't log the solo cups. He did log the broken glass. Now, why the broken glass? People have glasses in their home. Why did the police not affiliate, hey, this is a reason to ask, is this one of your glasses, to the Alberts or the people at that residence? Do you own glasses like these? Is this one of yours? That would have been able to give them a search warrant into the house, etc. They didn't go that route. Again, this leads to the defense. Bad investigation. Didn't follow all of the leads that were presented to them like they were supposed to. And he was putting the pieces of glass together where they were missing, what follicles, fabrics, and stuff were found on it. Very short, direct, very short cross-examination. We spent a lot more time with Ash Valier, is another DNA forensic scientist examinist. She is called the Puzzler. She is also a junior entry-level person. She's a lot younger than most of the other analysts that we've had. And she is the one who physically was tasked with assembling and putting together the taillight. Why she was not the person to bring out the taillight instead of Maureen, I don't know. Just put it together, and she was explaining how they were labeled. And she, again, all of these people once again identified Trooper Proctor as the lead investigator, and all of the evidence that she got, she also was the one who examined the clothes and was getting the pieces out of the clothes. She's like, I don't know how they got there. I was told they were there, and this was how they were given to me. This is who gave them to me. And it was always Proctor, 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 Proctor. He had access to the clothes for 6 days. He was the one who laid them out. He was the one who had access to the SUV, and he's the one who's handing and finding all of these additional pieces, 22 pieces of taillight by himself. It just looks sus overall. Now, what does matter about this is that the Ash had said, because I don't want to mess up her last name again, she had said that her that she had received different bags with different dates, and sometimes some of those pieces didn't go together that were found on the same day, but ones that were found on different days, they did ultimately all come together, which means they all did come from this tail light specifically, and that they all eventually matched up. There were just different ones found on different days, which made sense. If they found different items on different days, they're not logically all going to match up. It's the space of which they were found. How come these weren't found sooner? Why weren't they found earlier? Why were they all magically found by Trooper Proctor? And it just doesn't look good. And we ended up having the day be sent about because Aperture Labs, which are the reconstructionist and scientist examiners for Karen Reed's SUV and car analysis from the Commonwealth, who are coming in, they're acting as a rebuttal to ARCA, the Defense Reconstructionist Biomedical Engineers. But they came up on May 8th. They had a new report that got brought in, and Alessi was saying, talk about an ambush. This is a last minute report that completely changes the timing, because when the other timings that the Commonwealth had brought forth before, it aligned with when John O'Keefe's phone stopped having interactive activity, which is what the defense has made all the rest of their technological bases on, and they've already had and cross-examined many of those phone data analysis witnesses. And now we have this new report that shifts the time over, which means that it doesn't line up anymore, and they can't cross-examine a witness that they call in constantly. They won't have the grounds to do that. And they're like, this is an ambush. This is not okay. This is a violation. And the Commonwealth argued against that. And ultimately what the judge ended up ruling was that this new expert, the aperture scientist, there are a couple of them to my memory who are coming in, that their new findings are going to be allowed in, but she was going to give Alessi a lot of leeway to question how that came about. And because she's allowing a ton of the ARCA stuff in, that he's allowed to extensively go into maybe territory that wouldn't usually be allowed to go into because of the newness of the report and the report backgrounds and the changing of the times, etc. So it was kind of an odd ruling. I think it would have been more behooving just to say, no, we're not letting that report in. We're going to let in the report that we already had, because the aperture scientists are not new. They have been hired since January, when the case was originally supposed to begin, to already be brought in. And then after the trial, like midway through trial, they come up with a new report. But she's going to let it happen. She's going to let it be its own thing and let them rebut. And she's going to give a lot of leeway to the defense in cross-examination as a remedy for both parties, because there was also lateness that she let in from ARCA. So she's trying to be balanced, and that's what she's going with. Judge Canone just seems exhausted. She just seems over everybody. She's just like, fine, you know what, have your way and have your way. You can both have your way. Get this done with. And that is the end of days 17 and 18, and I will be bringing in the next people.